All right. Break करना तो no break. No break. You can 4:30. Right. So hello everyone. After so many weeks, I'm again back with you. Yeah. So you have had a long day today, I think, no? A double period of research, and next week also will be something like that. A double period of OB. Yeah. Whole thing is because Professor Ajanta went abroad, and then anyway, I had another session in the morning, so that was another problem in the sense that with the EMBA, I wouldn't have been able to come in the morning as well. So we take it easy in the afternoon, right? Main thing is to take it easy. And we are talking about lean. This is not the usual lecture that I do, although all of us know these subjects. This lecture is usually done by Dr. Sakuntala, right? But she's, I think, in hospital or something like that, not too well. So Mrs. Gayani also could have done this subject, but I think you already had 3 sessions with her now. So it would have been good to have someone else doing this, right? So anyway, take it easy, and we'll talk about this subject. Sadly, I feel that everyone is asking me about the assignments. Now everyone is getting excited about assignments. This, I will talk about that also as we go on, just to take your fear of the subject. There is no fear, actually, really. These are very interesting exercises. We'll talk about that later as we go towards the end of the session. Right, so we are talking about lean today. That is something I want to be also. Right? Lean, right? It's always good to be lean, because if you are lean, you have more energy. Otherwise, energy is stored in fat, right? And this is a problem, actually. Sometimes all of you who are doing sports need to watch out, in the sense that when you're doing sports, it's fine. But if you don't have the same level of activity as you grow older, now we can't run and all that kind of thing like that, you will find that whatever you consume turns into fat. That is the idea about lean. When you're talking in organizations also, when people start businesses, they start lean, right? That is no waste. Just the enough of, now if you look at a company like Apple, we always talk about Apple. It started with only 2 people and no big organization. It was a very small organization in a garage and they were assembling computers in the garage. There were no unnecessary people. The space was also just limited. So the whole operation is lean. Normally, all startups should start up lean. But as organizations go on larger and they grow, they accumulate fat, right? What you call fat. And there is a lot of waste. You get people who are very talented and cannot be totally employed. Sometimes there is a waste in the way their potential is not fully taken. In a large organization, people are hidden, right? They don't contribute. Even machines are idle sometimes, right? And even capital is idle. What we mean by capital being idle is space, sometimes space. Layouts are too large, right? So, unnecessary waste. So, this word lean came in, of course, it's not a new word, but where operations are concerned, 2 concepts that were there, which are very old, were efficiency and effectiveness. People used to talk about that for many years. But fairly, I would say in more modern times, 2 new words have got into the operations language, and that is lean and agile. Both are words that we normally use for athletes, right? If you're an athlete, you can't be fat. You have to be really lean. Your muscles have to be seen, right? So leanness and agile. Agile is you can move fast. You can flex yourself and do all that kind of thing. So agility is also a very important thing today because the world is getting more complex and you can't exist in the world unless you're lean and agile. It's a very important thing. Lean means unnecessary. Don't carry unnecessary weight. Not physical weight, but even don't do things that are not necessary. Right? Just do the things that you have to do. Right? And also agile. That is, things are changing very fast. In other words, change takes place very fast. Change is always exponential. The growth of change is exponential. It is not a straight line. It's rapidly increasing. If you look at technologies that are coming, they are coming very fast. And therefore, you have to move fast in the market because new ideas come in from the market. And if you don't respond to that, you will lose. So in a very complex, turbulent environment, it's very important to be lean and agile. That is, do the things that you are doing well, do them well, but don't do unnecessary things, right? On the other hand, change fast, right? Now, if you look at what you are going to do with this MBA, by the time you finish your MBA, the MBA also won't be the same. Seriously. I'm sure there will be new forms of MBA by that time. So then, you see, things are changing so fast. And so I'm taking the real meaning of this lean and agile. In other words, to exist, everyone needs to be lean and agile. Organizations need to be lean and agile. And even countries and the world itself, we have limited resources. So therefore, we can't waste. We can't waste. Today, people are talking about very important things like carbon footprint. Why carbon footprint? Because fuels and things like that are getting exhausted. So people are very concerned about carbon, the usage of carbon fuels and things like that. At the same time, they are talking about things like water footprint. The use of water is also getting more critical. And also the space. People are talking about things like earth footprint. I was mentioning that this building actually is planted on earth. And we are the waste of earth, right? Under this, because earth is meant to grow trees and give oxygen to the environment. People are not conscious about that, right? Because earth is an organic thing. A building is not organic. It's killing the earth. So these are new things people are talking about, which are very important to understand. So this concept of lean and agile generally is something that we need to think about. So if you look at your processes itself in the organization, you might ask questions. Are you doing, is there any waste? Waste can be in various ways. We will talk about the 7 waste. Of course, today people are talking about the 8th waste, which is a kind of waste of talent and things like that. There are a lot of talented people who are not used. But that is not Toyota. Really, we'll talk about 7 ways is Toyota. But generally, business people and management people have included the 8th waste. It's classical, not the 7 waste of Toyota, but that's also a waste. A waste of talent sometimes in an organization. You get a lot of talented people who are not totally utilized, right? So anyway, waste is one way of looking at trying to be lean. The other way is whether you are doing unnecessary things. If you look at what you're operating, are you kind of operating regularly without any variation? If you have too much of variation also, you're not lean. One day you're doing one thing, another day you're doing another thing. So as a result of it, your operation is also not uniform. So we try the whole idea about the philosophy of this lean. Of course, people say that it was the Japanese who came out with it in a big way. But the idea about lean was there even before the Japanese. But the Japanese perfected it. And you find still we use a lot of Japanese words when we are talking about lean management. For example, waste is called muda. Right? Everyone talks about muda. Muda has entered the English dictionary today. Right? So that is because, see, when you are trying to translate a word in another language, you don't get the full meaning. Muda is, in some way we say waste. But if you ask the Japanese guys, they will say it is not only that, not only waste, it is a lot of other things also, which are very important. That's why they have the 7 wastes and things like that. And also the principle of waste is not only things that are not used or something like that, but it has a major effect on the life of people to waste. If you waste time, for example, we have a limited lifespan, right? So I think the people should live for about 100 years at least, or something like that, right? Today people live for 100 years. So within that time, what was the useful life period of a person, right? So maybe out of that 30% of his time, he did something that was useful. The other time, of course, he just lived. So life in an organization is also like that. So talking a little bit of philosophy, because this idea about lean is a very philosophical idea. Right. But quite apart from that, today it has entered the language of operations. and it means a lot of things. So that's what we are going to talk about. Let me ask you, how many of you are operating lean systems in organizations? Anyone operating lean systems? No one is operating lean systems? No one. Is there anyone in MAS? Anyone in MAS? Who is in MAS? Now in an MBA class, you can't be silent, right? You have to contribute also. So, MAS guys, Brandix. Ah, very good. So, you have to also support me in this. Right? Okay. You all must be operating these things, sir. Sorry? That's okay. You are in finance? Ah, finance also has lean, no? Right. Operations, of course, lean, this idea about lean management started on the production line. But even finance can be lean. Yeah, no waste, right? And regular operation, standardized operation. So you get lean finance. Today, people are talking about lean HR also, right? Right? Lean has entered all the areas. What are the other, anyone else in garment manufacture? Garment manufacture? So these, whenever you are trying to enter the international arena with a business, and you are trying to be very competitive, you can't avoid becoming lean, because that is one of the biggest sources of competitiveness as well. The more lean you are, the more competitive you are. So you can actually, some of you, the people who are doing studying a process, right? You can study a lean process in an organization, or you can go and study how athletes are developed, because athletes are lean. Right? So you can take those ideas, how an athlete becomes lean and agile, and also try to apply it to your organization and see what really happens. How many of you are athletes or were athletes? Now no one is talking. This is the end of the day or something like that. You don't want to talk or something like that, right? So how many of you are done athletics or sports? I know some of you are definitely done sports. Ah, okay, sports. Very good. Right. What is the sport you did? Sorry? Hurdles? Fantastic. What is the length? Superb. Right? So have you gained weight now or you? Okay. So what did you do when you were athlete to be lean and agile? You had to practice. And then what is the practice you did? Yeah. Why do you run? Sorry? Yeah, stamina. Yeah, stamina and strength. Strength and stamina. So you would have gone to a gym also, no? Yeah. Very good, huh? So sometimes you need to identify, you really understand lean and agile if you talk to an athlete, what he has to do, and try to get that same meaning into your work, right? And now he was talking about daily exercising, right? Yeah. And you must have used a special diet, no? Yeah, no special diet. Special diet. I did rugby, so I know that rugby has a special diet, right? Because you have to have more protein and carbs as well. But the fact is that the diet is different from a say a rugby player's diet is different from a hurdler's diet. It's actually different, seriously. So otherwise you can't compete. You won't win. Actually, that's very important. So these ideas, that's okay. Thank you. Right. So you can, what I'm saying is that any one of you who is doing a study of a process, go and study how an athlete is practices. That's a nice, go and do something that's interesting, you know, and then see, and then try to take that meaning into work. What does it mean? That is very creative if you can do a thing like that, because that will make a lot of sense, right? What are the things they do? They do diet, exercise, what type of exercise. So try to get the same, because life is the same everywhere. Only it's applied in different processes. If you look at the process of developing an athlete and the process of developing a organization, can be applied. You have to see what it means. That's about all. So that's we talk about say something like what does protein mean? So the equivalent of protein and carbs. If you eat protein, you can build muscle. If those of you who don't have muscles, eat more protein, right? Those of you who are kind of finding that you have no stamina, take carbs. Eat more carbs, right? And then don't eat the carbs and just wait. You have to run and do all those kind of things. Otherwise, the carb will turn into fat. I think it's like that. You recruit a lot of, for example, if you recruit a lot of talented people and you don't give them a job, they will become a nuisance in the organization, right? So they will become the fat of the organization. That's very important to understand. There is a meaning which you can translate. So I would say that sometimes thinking originally is to go to another area of activity and try to apply it into another area of activity. You might create a new theory. That is how people are actually creating theories as well. Otherwise, going only to management and trying to study something boring, right? So therefore, that is interesting. So now let's talk about our subject. And to start off with, I want to play a clip of the famous Gemba Academy. Now this Gemba Academy, the word Gemba is workplace in Japan, right? So this particular academy is freely available on the web. So you can go into the web and refer some of those. They are freely downloadable. And this one I'm showing is also freely downloaded. And you can understand a lot of concepts. If you want to understand a concept like lean, for example, you can download a thing like this, particularly go to Gemba Academy. And in fact, in the library, I got the library to download some time ago, about 35 videos from that, and it's there. You can go to library and ask them for videos of Gemba Academy. But the thing is that now, for example, the particular version that I am showing today is the newer version. About 2 years ago, their version of Lean was a little different. So they also changed. So it's always good. You don't have to go to a place where you get discs or something like that. Just go to the web and any concept that you have in management, go and look under YouTube. But there are some mad fellows also who put things on YouTube. So you have to be very careful what you're choosing. The proper organization should, and you can really understand all the concepts that we're talking about in the MBA by just listening But a 5-minute video or something, it's very easy to understand. Sometimes you might not understand what we. So then don't fail to try to understand. That is okay. Actually today knowledge is freely available. Okay, so I want to play this video of Introduction to Lean by the MBA Academy.
Hi there, I'm Ron Pereira of MBA Academy, and I'd like to ask you a question. If someone asked you to explain, and I mean really explain, what this thing called lean manufacturing was all about, well, what would you say? Well, by the end of this video, you'll understand and be able to explain exactly what lean is, and you'll have advanced or perhaps even begun your personal continuous improvement journey. Okay, well, before we get started, allow me to explain what it is you're about to learn. Well, by the end of this video, you'll know why lean can and will change the world if applied properly. And you'll also know what lean is and isn't, as well as its long history. And finally, you'll be introduced to some of the most common lean principles, systems, philosophies, and tools used today by business, healthcare, and government organizations around the world. Well, let's begin by discussing why any of us should bother understanding or implementing lean. And to get us started, let's begin with a quote from Dr. Deming, who once said, "It's not necessary to change. Survival is not mandatory." And while it wouldn't be entirely accurate to say that lean and other continuous improvement methodologies, such as Six Sigma, will solve all of the world's problems, the recent global economic crisis we find ourselves in has made it crystal clear that organizations must be willing to change and improve if they hope to prosper and in some cases survive. Well, in addition to basic survival, let's spend a few minutes discussing some other reasons changing the way we think and operate has never been more important than it is today. First, world markets are definitely expanding, and the need to compete on a global basis has never been more important. It doesn't matter where in the world you live or work, I promise you someone is working to do it for less and at better quality. Next, because of the tough economic times we find ourselves in, our customers are demanding better quality, delivery, and lower costs like never before. And finally, the traditional methods of operating our companies simply don't work anymore. The days of holding massive amounts of inventory and taking months to deliver a product a consumer wants in days are long gone. Okay, well, now that we have a better understanding of the need for change, let's learn what lean is and how it can help each and every one of us. First of all, lean is an operational excellence strategy that enables you to change for the better. In fact, the Japanese word kaizen, which is often used by lean practitioners to describe the incremental improvements made throughout the lean journey, means to change for the better. And while kaizen can lead to quick improvements, the true spirit of lean is to work with a slow and steady purpose instead of quickly and recklessly. Along these lines, Taiichi Ohno, one of the chief architects of the Toyota production system, once said, "The slower but consistent tortoise causes less waste and is much more desirable than the speedy hare that races ahead and then stops occasionally to doze." Mr. Ohno goes on to say that the Toyota production system can be realized only when all the workers become tortoises. Another common definition is that lean is the persistent pursuit and elimination of waste. The Japanese word for waste is mura, which describes any activity that's done but adds no real value to the product or service. Sadly, many companies latch on to the elimination of waste aspect of lean while completely forgetting about arguably the most important aspect of lean, namely respect for people. So, while we must always fight to eliminate waste, we must never lose sight of our most important assets of all, our employees. Finally, lean is not only about attacking waste while increasing the speed at which products are produced. You see, lean is also very focused on improving the quality of our products as well as the stability of our processes. In fact, many lean principles such as one-piece flow will never succeed without stable and high-quality processes in place. All right, well, in order to truly understand what lean's all about, it's important to understand its history. And as we'll soon learn, the terms lean manufacturing or lean enterprise are actually relatively new in the grand scheme of things. In fact, most people assume that so-called lean thinking started in Japan by the founders of Toyota. This is actually false. In fact, in 1574, King Henry III watched the Venice arsenal produce finished galley ships every hour using continuous flow processes. Well, when we fast forward to the year 1799, we discover Eli Whitney perfecting the concept of interchangeable parts, which was another manufacturing breakthrough. Next, in 1902, a young man by the name of Sakichi Toyoda revolutionized the manufacturing world forever with his invention of the judoka concept. Simply put, Mr. Toyoda discovered a way to make his mother's automatic loom stop running when a piece of thread broke instead of continuing to run while creating excess amounts of wasted product. Little did he know, but the concept of judoka, or automation with a human touch, would later become a pillar of the vaunted Toyota production system. A few years later, a man by the name of Henry Ford was busy building an American empire called the Ford Motor Company. And in 1910, Ford moved operations to Highland Park, often referred to as the birthplace of lean manufacturing, due to the continuous flow of parts throughout the massive plant. A year later, in 1911, Sakichi Toyoda traveled to the United States in order to study Ford's revolutionary way of producing the Model T. It was shortly after this visit that Mr. Toyoda first began to conceptualize what we now call the Toyota production system. Then, in 1938, the just-in-time, or JIT concept was born at Toyota. The basic premise behind JIT is that we only make what we need when we need it, while downstream processes take what they need from upstream processes. When coupled together with the other pillar of TPS, judoka, or automation with a human touch, we arrive at what's often referred to as a TPS Stonehenge, which places the concept of thoroughly removing waste while respecting people at the top. 1949 was an extremely important year in the history of TPS, as a young engineer named Taiichi Ono was promoted to shop floor manager at Toyota. Mr. Ono would soon become one of the chief architects of the Toyota production system. In fact, Mr. Ono was the first person to develop the elimination of waste concept, as well as the first to use Kanban to control the amount of work in process produced within the plant. And while Mr. Ono is commonly remembered for the invention of many of the lean tools we use today, it could be argued that his greatest gift to us all was the way he challenged Toyota associates to think and solve problems by asking why again and again. Next, as the Toyota production system matured and Toyota began to excel as a corporation, the rest of the world began to take notice. And in 1975, the Toyota production system was translated into English, enabling, for the first time, non-Japanese speaking individuals the opportunity to learn all about this amazing production system. Well, up to this point, the term lean manufacturing wasn't actually used to describe the way Toyota worked. This all changed in 1990 as a group of American researchers led by Dr. James Womack traveled the world in order to study the various manufacturing methods in use. And what they learned during their travels was that Toyota was by far the most efficient automotive company in the world. And it was at this time that one of Dr. Womack's research assistants actually coined the phrase lean manufacturing. Well, as it turns out, the term lean, as well as the results of their research, was shared with the world when the book, The Machine That Changed the World, was released. And this brings us to the present day. And while lean is definitely being used to eliminate waste and increase profits in manufacturing environments around the world, lean is also spread to many other areas. In fact, you'll find lean being utilized in office environments, where things such as reducing the time it takes to process customer orders is very common. Another area lean has really taken off is in hospitals, where things like reducing errors and the time it takes to find critical supplies has added tremendous value. The military is also attacking waste and variation with both Lean and Six Sigma. And even parts of the U.S. Postal Service have begun their own lean journey, where they've benefited from the use of tools like value stream mapping and error proofing. All right, well, now that we've covered the history of lean manufacturing, it's time to discuss some of the most common tools lean practitioners employ.
Okay. Right. That's another video, so you need to check it out on the web. Really, what are the tools that they use in Lean? Moving forward, this is, as you can see, it is applicable everywhere. Just like athletes who keep fit, organizations also need to be lean. And if you are lean, you can be agile and then be very competitive as well. As an individual also, you need to look at your life. Lean is applicable to life as well. You check out and see what the things, all the things that you are doing, there may be waste, right? So, of course, you must enjoy life also, remember that. But quite apart from that, you might find that you can be more agile in your dealings and all that kind of thing. You can achieve more sometimes, maybe, if you eliminate some of the waste, right? So this is what very important philosophy of Lean, right? So what is Lean? So Lean is really a set of tools. That's what they say. But I would say that it's more than a set of tools. It is a set of tools, all right. But it is a philosophy. More than anything else, it's a philosophy. But to practice the philosophy, you need to have some practices. And what are these practices particularly? So it eliminates waste and also improves quality, production time, and also cost reduction. Look at the typical structure of Lean. And this is it's represented in different ways if you look at it, but this is one representation. Main idea is to have stable manufacturing processes. So we are using the word manufacturing here, but it could be also office processes or HR processes or whatever, right? There now we use some of these Japanese words, and that's very important. As I mentioned, we have an English meaning for that, but the Japanese meaning is very much more than that. As I told you, I worked with the Japanese, and what they were saying is that you can never understand the Toyota production process unless you study Japanese. That's because the meanings are quite different in Japanese, and therefore, it's more philosophical. Of course, you can understand it at a certain level, but if you want to really understand, that is some competitive advantage Japanese have by using those terms as well, because it's really understood what they are talking about. So you have this standardized work, that is, work is generally standardized. There are two ways of doing that. One is this Haijunka, which really means error-proofing, and also Kaizen, which is continuous improvement. If you look, the two main pillars of this Lean process is on one side what they call just-in-time. That means there must be continuous flow and use principles of takt time. Takt time we, I think, mentioned earlier. It is not, it is really based on the customer's demand. How soon does a customer want something? So you start calculating it from that. Otherwise, the other converse is look at process time, which is you say that we don't think about the customer. We say, okay, what our process can do, and then you use that time. And also, therefore, use for pull systems. That is, you would more look for demand. Demand pulls. So if there is no pull, then there you should not operate. Very often, waste results by building to stock, hoping that customers will buy. But if you don't want to store anything, you have to build to order. You have to build to order. Only when a customer wants something that you make it. So therefore, there is no waste. Look at look at the garments like shirts and things like that. Shops are full of that on their shelves. It's a massive waste. They have overproduced. And not only that, they have pulled resources from the whole world. If you look at even the trees that are growing cotton and all that kind of thing like that, is being pulled as a result of it. But if you can really understand, if you can match the real demand, if you can do that, and also produce, if you can produce only for the demand, then there won't be any waste at all. So that is the whole philosophy of this Lean, to try to work only on pulls, pull systems, demands. Of course, you must also be aware of triggers. That is, from time to time, there are changes. because of environmental changes, or sometimes you look at something like the COVID or something comes in. The COVID really upsets supply chains in a big way, right? If you look at the number of, say, aircrafts that were being manufactured on demand, right? And suddenly the COVID comes, people don't travel. There is a massive hold up. So that you can't avoid. So therefore, we have to minimize that kind of effects. And if we can predict something happening, you can't predict something like COVID coming that easily, but you can be ready for it in some way. If something happens, what would you do? That's more like a contingency plan. On the other side, you have what's called Jidoka, which is actually a connection between how men and machines work together. Very often, the earlier principle is you make the machine and you have to train the person to work with the machine. Whereas the newer concept is look at the person and try to design the machine so that the person can work with the machine, right? So that there is a combination of man and machine. That's a very important thing. Also, the ability to identify things that are happening. And this idea about pokayoke, that's a Japanese word again. What it really means is to error-proof. To error-proof. A good example is of pokayoke is, say now you have your credit card, you can't insert it on the wrong side, no? That is pokayoke. In other words, if you can design something so that it doesn't work, you don't make a mistake. Just imagine if your card was not, if both sides were possible and it doesn't click in, it's a waste of time. So now you know exactly, and you know exactly how to insert it also so that it goes in straight. And if you go to the other side. So there are so many things like that that you can insert in which machines help people, that machines help people. So the main goal here is looking at highest quality, lowest cost, and shortest lead times and things like that. So that's the principle. Of course, you have this Taiichi Ono, the famous person who is supposed to be the father of the Toyota production system. I think they spoke about him also in the clip. Right. So you need to have a mindset. If you are doing lean, on one side, your attitudes must be lean attitudes, the mindset. So, and if you have that mindset, then the outcomes are very clear. Anything is like that. I think if any one of you has the mindset of getting a merit at the end of the MBA, you will get it. I can assure you that, right? Right? You have to have the mindset to do that, right? If you are saying, okay, I'm just going to be passing through, somehow do the thing, then it's not, then you will also, you will go, you will pass, you get the MBA. But if you really want the mindset and you make up your mind, I'm somehow going to do that, you can do it. You can do it. There is no question about that. Anything is like that in life. If you are really clear about something and you want to do it, the mind will help you to do it. That response is very important. So we are talking about mindset. Mindset. So you need to have a lean mindset. What is a lean mindset and what are the lean behaviors? Very important thing, flexibility is more important than scale. That is your processes. Whatever you do should be flexible. That is because of a demand, whether you can flex to that demand. Can you change as a result of that? Someone wants something, right? Can you flex it? Now you are fully busy in work, maybe you are doing something at home and your wife comes and tells you, I want to go and buy something or something like that. Say, no, you do that in the evening, right? Then you are not flexible, right? Okay. So husbands don't tell wives like that, but wives tell husbands, okay? Right? Okay. So then therefore, that's what flexibility is about. Is it possible for you to accommodate a change that takes place when something happens? This is, I'm not that flexible actually, tell you the fact sometimes, but I can talk about it, no? Right? Right. So anyway, flexibility is a very important thing. in a process, say suddenly, can you change your process for some purpose? So if you can't do that, then you will lose the competition. You will lose in the competition, really. So this flexibility is very close to agility. It's a part of agility. Being flexible is a part of agility. So the very important thing, value is added at the front line. Even from the beginning, value should be added. Say if you are making a good kind of maybe some where do you start adding value? It is with the raw materials. See that you get the best raw materials as possible. Because you can't, at the end of it, if you don't get good raw materials, your entire recipe will be wrong. Very important thing. So if you're talking about people, see that your recruitment process, one of you, are you ever talking about, no, who was talking about recruitment processes? Okay, right. See that you get the right guys. Otherwise your processes won't work properly. So value starts there. Very important at the front line itself. Also, everyone should understand how they do fit into the business goals. Even the sweeper. Sometimes we try to, I don't know whether you are aware about these things. Our janitorial services are very much better than anywhere else. Seriously, right? They are very friendly guys, right? Do you have people like that in your organization? Generally, janitorial guys are not that friendly also. How about our security guys? No one had a fight with our security guys? I'm sure they are not. That is because when we recruit anyone, we do a training process. And they are the front line of the organization. Someone comes in, first time they will ask direction or something from one of those guys. So really, you have to train your frontline guys. And they must feel that they are actually a part of the organization. Do you ask your frontline guys, do you know the vision of the organization? Right? The vision of the organization is more important for those guys. Because then they will work towards the vision. Sometimes, in their own way, they will be better representatives of the organization. We are in offices sometimes, and people don't contact us. But the guys who are on the front lines are always there. So this is very important what we are talking about. The front line, the first part of the process is actually very important. So the root cause of problems need to be addressed, not just the symptoms. That is why we go through a whole process of root cause analysis. When we are trying to understand something, there are so many processes of root cause analysis. Some of you might use the Ishikawa diagram or the cause and effect diagram and go right down to maybe sometimes you have to go up to a 10th level. You can't just stop at the 4th level or something like that. Some problems might actually end up at the 4th level, but it depends on the problem. Then you have the why, kind of 5 why method. You 5 times ask why. Seriously, you ask, if you have a problem with anyone, you keep on asking why, and you will get the answer. Don't stop asking why. Right? Actually, this is a good advice for ladies and all those things like that, where people like, I don't want to let down the side also, but generally we go all loafing all over the show and things like that. Then the lady will ask, okay, why did you go there? So we say, because of that. So why must you do that? Because of this. Then you ask again why. You ask why again, and suddenly you have to tell the truth. So you try that out and see with anyone and see. You just ask about 5 times why. Don't stop asking why. And that's a simple principle, a real village principle of asking. And Toyota principle, Toyota production process is famous with this 5 why. If they have a problem, they ask 5 times why. So then you get the root cause, not the symptom. A symptom is like, for example, when you have a headache, you take a Panadol or something like that. That is you're treating the symptom, but you're not treating the problem. Every morning if you get a headache, then you have some other problem. You just taking the Panadol alone won't do. You have to ask why 5 times. Why do you have to take Panadols every morning? What is this thing? Why? Ultimately, the doctor will have to ask the last whys. But anyway, quite apart from that, it's like that. right? So don't forget the 5 why. That is very important for root cause. A problem is an opportunity to improve. Definitely, it's a problem is definitely very welcome. And if you have a problem, then it's an opportunity to improve your process. So that's the mindset. If you have an attitude like that, then it will lead to certain behaviors. So the behaviors what you are looking at is that the decisions are driven by long-term systemic consideration. You'll find that you're addressing the right things, that you have issues in the organization. Management is connected to day-to-day reality of the front line. We are aware of the front line. The front line is like the surface of the organization. It's actually the connection with the environment. So frontline is very important. Frontline staff are engaged in real improvement activities all the time, like shop floor people, salesmen in the market. That's the frontline. So management works to resolve systemic problems. There are systemic problems. That is problems in the system. Now the principle of, say, those days, you know that we had quality control. That is, you look at the product and at the end of it, your focus is on the product. But if quality assurance is not the focus on the product, quality assurance is the focus on the system. If you actually put the system right, then the problems will come right. The products will come right. So quality assurance is assurance of the system, not of the product. So that superseded the quality control that was there earlier. Otherwise, you have to always control everything, and you just see, you don't look at the system. But if you focus on the system and create it like that, so that is really true. Say, good parents will create good children, right? So the system is the parents, the children are the product, right? So this is very important to really understand. So you have that. Also, there is always open dialogue. That is important, because if there is a problem, you shouldn't never cover it and try to avoid it, talking to people. Actually, if you have a problem even in the organization, you should address everyone, because you might get an answer from a place you never thought that you will get the answer. So you must be quite open if there is a problem. And that is one of the principles of Lean, is that everyone should know what's happening in the organization all the time. Now, this can be, sometimes people are not thinking like that. If they have a problem, they will cover it. At the end of it, it will emerge in a very bad way. Okay, so now we have some principles of Lean, and that's important. Value. So the whole idea is that how you might look at processes that add value, say operations that add value, and try to eliminate non-value adding processes as well. So in the process, you might get various types of things, and you might add. Now, if you look at the MBA curriculum, do you think you have a subject that does not add value? Seriously, I'm asking you. Right? Right? Yeah. No one wants to answer that, right? Right. But there are MBA programs that have eliminated non-value adding subjects, and really, now I did just for the EMBA today in the morning, I finished a subject which is entrepreneurship, and we did only 4 sessions, right? On the Saturday before last, not last Saturday, before that, we did 2 sessions from 9 to 12 and 1 to 4. And last week we did again 9 to 12 and 5 to 4. And we covered the subject. What I did is I always removed in our curriculum, the MBA curriculum, which does 10 subjects, right? I removed a lot of stuff from that and did the subject for them, which is only the value adding stuff. Now, sometimes, so you can do an MBA like that, in 1 year. really seriously. I'm trying to kill my own competition, but the, the fact is, I think we are thinking of things like that, right? So, unfortunately, there is a standard MBA which we have to comply with, otherwise you won't get that quality standard of 12 or something like that, 11 or 10 or whatever, thing like that, because we have to have 60 hours of something or the other and 50 hours or something, 30 hours of lecturing for a subject, things like that, which are standardized. But anyway, so I think everything can be looked at as value. Okay, who defines the value is the customer, and that is why it's such a variable thing. Value is, as we mentioned what value is, last time there are two types of value. One is functional value, that is the use of it, right? If you have a car, the functional value is it will take you from one place to the other. Another functional value, it won't break down easily. Another function is it can be easily repaired. Another function means it won't, it's quite, there are spare parts and all those things like that, and it's easy to run the car. That is functional. But there is an emotional value as well, the color, the shape, right? And most of the people are actually worried about both, right? Not only, so therefore, remember, customer wants both those. So we have to look at, we just can't look at only the functional value and try to eliminate certain things. So you say all what a person wants is to go from one place to the other in a car, then the car will be just like a box, right? Just there you get in and you drive it, and then, but that won't do, no. You have to have other things as well. So anyway, this is very important, and that's what the customer gets in return for price. So more value means more price. Maybe. Then you have what we call value-added activities. Every activity, we have to ask whether it will add value. What is the value it will add? Now, if you look at a gadget like this, it's a highly value-added thing. Starts off with absolutely no value, like plastic, pieces of pellets of plastic, and some very cheap ICs or something like that. But in the minds of a designer, he has designed this. You can look at the shape and the how easy is it to, whether it sits in the palm and all at any angle. All those kind of things, the center of gravity of this, all those things are designed. So it adds value. So maybe this is more expensive than the other one. The brand is Logitech. Logitech is, of course, a very good brand, right? So this is very important. So I talk about the form and the function. That's what we said. The function is, the form gives you the emotional value, and the function will give you the real functional value of a product. So the customer is willing to pay for that. Then we have, therefore, what we call the value stream. The value stream is a process of operations which each one adds on the value of the previous one, So therefore, you have a value stream. A stream is actually like a flow in a river. It's flowing. So you have to look at it as stream. So one thing about a river is that it has constant velocity. Right, at any point, even in a flood, the velocity is the same. So any point in the stream, and even the tributaries that come to the stream have to flow, otherwise there will be overflow, flooding onto a bank. So that metaphor of the river is a very important thing to understand in the process. How well can you make it a flow? That's the whole idea. How can you make it a flow? So there shouldn't be any stops or whatever. So it's a set of tasks and activities. So you actually, ultimately it makes it into products or services. We are also talking about services, right? So important. So this is really what you call a value stream, is a stream of steadily flowing processes, which is very important. So the principle or the concept of the stream is very important for value. So you have value added, not in parts just like that, but value added along a stream, a flowing value added thing. So that's why we later on come into value stream mapping. which is a very important thing in trying to do lean. Then we talk about flow. I was just talking about flow. So when you have a stream, you have flow. The velocity of the flow is constant right throughout, and there is no stoppage. So these are all idealistic things. In real life, it doesn't happen just like that. But the principle that you want to aim at is that, right? Whatever you do, try to approximate a value stream. Whatever you do, the smooth flow. Going through the MBA also should be smooth flow, right? You don't get stopped somewhere, right? Go at the same pace. Whatever subject you are, maybe you have come from a finance background, so finance subjects will be really soup for you, no problem, right? But the other things might be sometimes a little bit straining, right? Other subjects that are straining you, yeah. So you must have the same flow. Try to get the same flow, right throughout. So that's very important. So flow is important. Also pull. Not just flow, but the flow is based on the pull. That is, it will flow only if there is a demand. That's important. So not just push. The opposite of pull is push. Most of the processes are push processes. If you have push processes, that means you're building to stock. You're trying to persuade your guys to somehow stock something, hoping that people will buy. Look at garments and things like that in shops. If you go to any clothes shop, you can see how they are stacked. That's not based on demand. It's based on production capacity. When people have production capacity, they will use that. And as a result of it, there's so much of waste. I don't know what they really do. I mean, for years, do they keep those shirts? And any idea? Go and ask those guys. That will be very interesting. What do they do with those shirts? Because styles will change and all those things after some time, right? And then they won't be of any use. What do they do with that? So I think just imagine. That is, so these are the kind of principles of lean. Value added activity, value stream, flow, and pull. Those are the principles of any lean system. Then we have some of the concepts we are going to talk about. There are so many concepts, but I'm only limiting it to a few concepts. One is just in time. Just in time, or what's sometimes called JIT. JIT, just in time. Right? What do you mean by that? That is, what it really means is when you want it, it's there. Just in time. You don't keep it and then use it. Right? Say, for example, the Toyota production process, the Toyota factory is trying to work just in time. These are idealistic things. It doesn't happen 100% like that. So you'll find that you have this assembly line, and the car is moving, the chassis comes first just in time. So the supplier of the chassis, they don't make the chassis. The chassis is made by someone else. They come just in time, it's assembled. There is a little bit of stock on the side, that's about all, only for the day maybe sometimes. And it doesn't go into a storage. It goes on that. The guy, then the sheet metal guys will come along the way. Then say sometimes you get the electrical circuit guy will come in just in time and fit it. They don't do it. Toyota has only the process. The technology only is Toyota's. They don't make anything. Everything comes from different suppliers just in time. Even the tires come in just in time, they fit it on the cars and they go. It's not stored. So this is idealistic. It doesn't really happen 100% like that. There is a little bit of storage. But because they consider storage as a waste. Storage is a waste because capital accumulated. Capital caught up. The typical, in a financial document, the stores is an asset, right? In other words, sometimes you can sell it off. But that is not the concept of lean. Lean is, it's a liability. storage is a liability, right? In other words, your capital is caught up, right? And that's not very good. Okay, so now the principle of just in time. So it means just to minimize inventory and also therefore increases efficiency as well. So this is the principle. Consumption is the one that really which really gears the just in time based on the demand, the consumption of the consumers. Say look at, for example, Coca-Cola or something like that. When Coca-Cola is manufactured, it's manufactured to stock in factories. And then there is no room in the stock also. Then they go and dump it into the kind of a distributor. Okay, distributor also has his stock. And distributor also has no room. He goes and dumps it into the retailers. You go to all the kades, you get enough of Coca-Cola bottles. And then the consumers, do they consume at the same rate? They don't consume at the same rate as it's produced. On a rainy day, no one drinks Coca-Cola. I don't know, do you all drink Coca-Cola on rainy days? I mean, do you drink Coca-Cola anyway? Right? So you can see the difference. We are talking about the demand. Demand is that on that day, how many bottles of Coca-Cola are consumed. And on this side, you look at how many bottles of Coca-Cola are produced. So what happens to stock? It's always caught up somewhere along the way. And therefore, we are not working on the demand, on the consumption. So what JIT actually means is, just in time, is it's based on the consumption rate, and the production is based on the consumption rate. It's suffered, there's small buffer, there's supplied a small buffer. You have to have a small buffer because there are triggers, what you call triggers are things happen which you don't expect in real life that happens. Say, for example, you're trying to use a JIT thing. I can remember doing this when I was working in that factory. We used to get, we tried to operate a just in time on computers itself using colors, and to show what our stock level is in colors. Red means we are really out. Orange means we are just going out, and green. And then the supplier is in Japan for the raw materials. He has the same, he has a connection with our computer. So he knows exactly what our position is, and then he releases just in time. But what really happens is sometimes the plane that carries, these are small items, they are transported by plane, it goes and lands in another airport. Then you have to go and clear it, right? So real things like that happen, you can't avoid it. So one way of avoiding is, of course, to have the same culture and the same thinking among, that's what Toyota tries to do, right? But it's difficult. So a little bit of buffer is required, just enough for a day or something like that. And then it goes on, the supply to the consumer. So this is the principle of JIT. Now to operate just in time, you need a device. That device is called Kanban. Right? Kanban is actually a card. Sometimes the word Kanban means card in Japanese. It's Kanban, right? Now, some people call it Kanban. It has got fully Americanized or what? Kanban, right? So eventually, this is a card. It is a signal that you should. So this Kanban thing is just only a signal. It can be a card, real actual card. You actually take it and say, okay, my consume is over, and then you pass the card on to the producer of the second. It's normally done like this. Usually between two processors, you can operate a Kanban. Say the process B, for it to start, process A must just release. So therefore, you find that the whole processes of items like this are geared to the customer's demand. If the customer requires only the first process, we give. Like that, the next process will also move like that. And so therefore, you have to give the signal that process B needs raw materials or something like that. And the way of doing that can be actually done electronically or physically by giving a card, and then process A will then release that amount of materials to B. Till then, it won't release. So ultimately, the chain between processors is based on supply and demand, only supply and demand. So you don't draw in also. So this principle of the Kanban system is very important to ensure that you have just in time. So these two concepts are very important to understand. And also the real success relies on steady production. You have to therefore high quality workmanship, no machine breakdowns, and reliable suppliers. So that is very important to understand, but there are hiccups all the time. Even in Toyota, for example, they get their things just in time, but there are hiccups. There was one factory that caught fire that was making a valving system, which was required for the brake, and that factory caught fire. So then the entire production process really stalled. And typically that's where the Jidoka really works. What happens is you stop everything. You have to stop everything. Otherwise, more damage is caused if you keep working. The entire chain of production is stopped. And then once it's repaired, you start it again. Then there is no waste. That's very important. So anyway, what happened there is because the culture that they have between their suppliers and the Toyota production process itself, it's the other suppliers, nothing to do with that valving system. They went and helped this guy to start up. All the other guys, because of that culture, they normally in another situation, another supplier is not worried about another supplier's problem. But here everyone got together and helped that guy because everyone is affected by this. This entire community of suppliers is affected, right? That principle is called the Kairetsu. Kairetsu is actually a principle that has a culture between suppliers, which they use another Japanese term called haragei. Haragei means a feeling in the stomach. You know, it's a very raw word that if something happens to someone else, you get a feeling in the stomach. Now, basically, really, if you are scared of something, you get this word of butterflies in the stomach and things like that. So they're using that principle that everyone gets shocked. Then something happens somewhere, so they get together and sort out. Almost like an old village system, although it's very modernized. So there are issues that happen. Now in Honda also the issue like that happened. They had to recall a whole series of cars because there was a fault in the braking system in one of those cars. I don't know what was the car, some car, one model. So when there are hiccups like that, you can't help it. Life is never perfect, but you try to be perfect. You aspire to be perfect. That's very important. Okay. So here's another concept, what's called Jidoka. Jidoka is trying to really means the connection between man and machine. And they use this word automation, not automation. Automation is when a machine is automatic. But automation means a combination of automatic machine and a people. How much people also can be connected to an automatic machine, automation, right? So it can be quite simple. We were talking that Seiichi Ono really repaired his mother's, they were talking about that in that video, loom. This Seiichi Toko is Ono. Seiichi Ono is really one of the originators of the Toyota production system. His mother had a weaving factory, or I don't know, small thing, and there was a machine that was weaving cloth. So what happens is when you weave cloth, if one of the threads break, one of the fibers break, and you let it go like that, the whole yardage is damaged, the entire beam is damaged, and you have to replace that, and you can't use that. It goes as damage. So he devised a system that the machine stops immediately when a thread breaks, and therefore it prevents the further damage. Then you can put a small knot and send the whole thing. That's normally what happens, right? You get knots in woven cloth, but that doesn't damage the other balance. You can cut that piece off if you want to. So that is the principle of automation. When a machine is working, if human intervention can come in and stop a damage happening, then you have automation. So it can happen very manually. Like they say, manual feed, you watch the machine and see what's happening. Or automatic feed, where sometimes you watch the machine cycle, or a person is not there, and the machine itself can sense a damage, and then it will stop immediately. So that's totally automatic, but it has been designed by a person. So therefore, that's why you say the human intervention is there, right? We are conscious about it. So in a typical process, which is going on automatically, if there is a problem, what would you do? You have to stop the process, very important thing, and then repair it and move it forward. So that can happen automatically or at these three stages. Either purely manually it can happen, or intervention between man and machine, or sometimes a man designed thing in a machine can sometimes be this principle of jidoka, right? So these Japanese words are still retained in lean management because they are very conceptual terms. They move forward. Here's another principle which is called heijunka. Right? Right? Okay. Very funny words, but anyway, it kind of we have to learn these words also. No, sometimes right? Japanese fellows are very serious about these words. I used to work with the Japanese too. So when they say these words, sometimes we start laughing also a little bit, but quite apart from it, heijunka. Right? So the principle of heijunka is you normally get variation like this as you go on. It can be a lot of things, but we have to have it within limits. We contain it within certain limits. So that's called leveling. This is without leveling, and this is leveling. So you need to have devices that help you to do that. Sometimes it can be manually managed or okay, sorry. Right. So it means leveling. That things happen within a certain minimized variation, right, over a given period of time. So this enables production to efficiently meet customer demands while avoiding batching. See, very often this batch process we were talking about last time is a very inefficient way of production, right? So what they say is you must have single item flow, right? Which is very important, single piece flow, which is very important. So if you have single piece flow, sometimes it will prevent a lot of unnecessary things like it will minimize inventories, it will minimize capital cost, it will minimize manpower, production time. In other words, it will make the value stream flow smoothly. So there are three aspects when you are talking about heijunka. One is you need to be you must be able to predict that something that maybe the demand is now you understand that there is going to be a variable demand, right? If there is a variable demand, you must be able to first predict it, right? What are the things that you get variable demand? You get variable demand, say for example, in a food store or something like that, maybe a bakery. I always use bakery as an example. I don't know why, but it's a very everyone is familiar with bakeries, so that's why I'm using that. Right? Is so many items, say types of cakes, cupcakes, right? And various items of. Now they make stuff, no? So very often some of the stuff is wasted, right? At the end of it, we don't know who will come and buy. There are regular customers, and there are people who just pass that way. Suddenly they see some thing like one of our own MBAs who set up a business is scrumptious brownies. I told you about this, no? Yeah. So I was asking her actually, how do you manage your waste? Is there waste? She said, no, there's no waste. Somehow or the other, some way of predicting because they have different items. Some of those things are, of course, they can be stored in fridges, but then you have to store it. That's waste. Can you make things that people will immediately take everything off? That's difficult. But this is the principle that they're talking about. If you have this hejunka, you are finding a method so that you don't have to have cold storage. In other words, there are brownies, for example. If no one buys it, it can be put in the fridge, right, and taken out the next day. It has some fridge life, right? It has you can freeze it, but it's not 100% thing. Some other things are only shelf life things. Say, for example, in a bakery, I think there may be high wastage. So ideally, you should not have that. The principle here is we are trying to say, how much can you level it so that there is no wastage? So one of the things is predictability, to have some idea. Say, for example, they will know on a Friday there is high sales. On a Wednesday, there might be less sales. Tuesday is a very bad day, so they will produce less. So that kind of predictability over a period of time, sometimes you might be able to look at a statistic. You might be able to look for a statistic and then you make according to that. Running out of stuff is also a bad thing because the guy won't come again. After some time, they'll come and see, okay, it's not available, no point going there. So that's also not good. For good business, you should have that as well. Also, change over time and stability. By decreasing change over time, that is sometimes when you're making different products, you might have different equipment or processors. Stability by averaging production. So these are predictability, flexibility, and stability are three very important aspects if you want to practice this principle of lean, which is called hejunka. So that's a little more about this subject because it's a kind of a very important subject, how you can level productivity. Okay. So therefore, you have some concepts. Now you're very familiar with takt time. No? Takt time is the time that a customer wants a delivery. How fast? So it's quite different to the typical cycle time. Cycle time is based on a production concept, whereas takt time is based on a marketing concept. That's very important. The demand. Okay. Are you all feeling okay or whatever? I mean, I am going at a rate, I don't know. Sometimes, right? It's 3:20, so by 4:30 we are over. So try to you know what, sustain yourselves. Right. Try to. I don't know. This is the only way of doing things, so lecturing and kind of thing. A whole lot of people actually. That Pakistan guy came that day, all right? He was making some comments and making some jokes also about our guys and all those things like that, right? Saying that everyone is a packed place and, you know, people look tired and all that kind of thing like that. And anyway, people were responding in spite of that and all those things. No, nothing bad. But anyway, he came on the last 5 minutes now. So, right. Now, if you all want a break and all those things like that, not to go out and come, at least just, you know, you can always ask for it, right? Walk around and things like that. Okay. I don't want to do a practice exercise, but it's okay, right? Okay, right, we go. And takt time is a very important guide to for hejunka implementation. Now, you know what hejunka is? That's leveling, right? to try to keep the same flow in what you're doing so that you won't have extra stocks or no waste and things like that. And you still can meet the customer's need, which is variable. Remember that the customer's needs need not be constant, can be variable. It can be due to the weather. It can be due to some trigger that's there, like, some emergency or something like that. So in real life, those things happen. But at the same time, the business must be smooth. So this is the important thing. Volume levering, that is, for example, we are talking about how many items you are producing and whether you can produce the same volume every day. So you are assuming that consumption will be the same. It won't be the same. But still, whether you can kind of level the volume. Then you have also type, say different types. Again, look at the example of the bakery. They have different types of short eats, right? And they are leveling. You must ask our canteen guys how they do leveling and things like that. Right? They have very special things. So they have a patty that only they make. Right? It's a very hard patty. Right? The patty that they make is you don't get it anywhere else. Seriously, right? Have you, next time you try that patty? I don't know. You have bought that patty? Canteen? It's an unusual patty. Really, kind of very hard and rubbery. And so anyway, they always have something left over. So what they do and things like that, you must ask this guy this. Actually, you all are MBA guys, right? So you all can't just be like that. You must go and ask questions from people, about their life. How do they do things, right? And things like that. It's kind of, I can remember when, this Dr. Sakuntala, no? You know Dr. Sakuntala? Okay, Dr. Sakuntala is one of our colleagues. When she was an MBA student, she used to go and do that. All of the shows, she goes and asks questions about what's happening. And one day she had some problem with the canteen when she was a new student, right? And the canteen guys had told to go and complain to the owner of the canteen. So she came, I didn't know that, but she came and blasted me. He blasted me. So I asked, why are you calling me? Then she went on, she thought I was the owner of the canteen. Seriously. You ask us, even now, I said, why the hell did you think that I am the owner of the canteen? So the canteen had described the guy who doesn't have hair on the head. So kind of, a shaven head. So that's why she came and blasted me. I was listening to the full blasting, right? And then only I asked her, why are you telling me this? Right? The canteen told to complain to you. I said, I have nothing to do with the canteen, right? Anyways, funny things like this happen in this place sometimes, So, yeah. Okay, so that's type leveling, that depending on the sort and things like that. This is done sometimes with I don't want to explain this a little more deeper. Those of you who are really going into lean, it requires you to explain a lot of techniques, and this is called the Hejunka box, where you sometimes the way of analyzing. I'll show you a little bit of analysis just to take your curiosity off. But that's a technique that you might use. So that's, you remember this, this guy was in the video also was talking about Taiichi Ohno, that is the founder of the Toyota Production System, making a very funny statement. He says the slower but consistent tortoise causes less waste and is much more desirable than the speedy hare that raises the head and then stops occasionally to doze. Famous story about the hare and the tortoise. When we are, so that's really true. If you are working, you have to do little by little every day. Really speaking, whatever you are doing, even your assignments is like that, right? Really do only 1 page a day or half a page a day, and in a few days you have finished your assignment. So that is like the slow tortoise. Whereas you all like, sometimes, I'm not saying you all, but like the speedy hare. You know, everything is done at a rate at the end. So quality and everything is gone. And you have not only gone for your children's parties and all those things like that, you missed all that. Whereas if you do slowly, you will have enough time to do all those other things. Seriously. Very important. Every day, do that. When I did my MBA, I did like that. I told you I used to always, then we didn't have smartphones and things like that. But I used to carry a A4 sheet folded into 16 in my pocket. And every assignment, every day I finish 1 page. Just ideas only, you can't write everything. And I have 16 folds, 16 pages. And then with that, I one day sit at the, we had computers then, desktop, and hammer the whole thing in 1 day. So you can, every little by little, this is a very important principle of lean, is how you can do all the things you want to do in life. If you do little by little, everything, every day, little by little. It's a very important fundamental principle. I think some of the students still talk about this. I have been talking about this idea for many years, and some people I meet later, and now they are working, they say they can still remember that, and they actually use that principle, and it made a lot of sense, you know. Now, this is not my idea. This is a Toyota production process. I'm just telling you. Sometimes these are fundamental things. Remember this quote. A very important quote is not to work like the speedy hare, because you destroy all life if you do that. You will never be, you have to somehow give it no at the end. So therefore, you will stop everything else and do it and destroy everything else also. Sometimes you might even put aside some of your office work to do that, and that's not okay, right? Even office work, every day, do little by little. You know, don't do too much, just do a little by little. See that you don't miss out on anything. And this principle is a very important, work slowly and consistently. That's very important. Change over time, that is, we are looking at machines and things like that. When you want to change a sort, is a very important thing in Hejukas. That's very important. And have always a little bit of inventory. Although we say that we don't have to have any inventory, any stores, you need to have a little, just enough. Now, the principle here is the principle of the supermarket. Now, you know what happens in the supermarket. If you go, there are shelves. And on the shelves, you get items. Items are laid on the shelf, so many items this way and so many items this way. Look at, say, a set of bottles of sauce or something like that. You get about 10 bottles there, maybe, or maybe something like 8 bottles, 4 this way and 2 inside. So when a customer takes out one, they come and replace only that principle, and they have a little bit of stores in the background. They shouldn't have too much. They shouldn't have it too much. And what happens is the supplier comes and says, not on the shelf. They may look at the shelf also, but they look at what's there in the background and say, okay, and fill only that. They fill only that. They don't give a massive stock. So as a result of this, this moves it moves at the rate of the demand. It moves at the rate of how soon a person takes out something, it gets filled back. So that principle is there in the supermarket. In fact, supermarket is working on this Hejuka principle as well. So that's just a buffer inventory, just enough. Look at the shelves in the supermarket, that's buffer. That's the buffer. So even in supply chain, value stream mapping, we use a symbol which is called a supermarket. This is very important. Of course, type standardizing, when you are doing things, it's always good to have regular types. Say again, I'm talking about the bakery. The type of shortage that you have should be standard. Every time don't drop one type and put another type or something like that, so that it becomes very predictable for the customer. They know it's there, and that's important. Right. So here's a small example, actually not a very good example, but an item. So these guys are making t-shirts. So there are so many models. Here one model with a plain t-shirt. Here's a t-shirt with a pocket, just for sake of example, right? Here you have t-shirts. These are variations, different types. T-shirt with a V-neck, t-shirt with a V-neck and pocket. So really, if you are mass producing, the way they normally do is they do one type first and finish. Say, for example, all the A's are done first, then the B's. Sometimes there may be a variation like this as well. But the fact is that the demand is different. Suddenly the customer will come. So therefore, you will have excess stock which is not moving if you do it like the mass producer. But if you look at the lean producer, his movement is like this. He will make two of A's, a B and a C. This is our example. So that he might actually level the demand in some way or the other, quite different to the earlier one. The first guy will only do all the A's first, that's mass producing, then all the B's, then the C's, and then the D's. So if there's a demand for the D, he can't supply immediately. So therefore, he has to do a little bit of variation. If you look at the lean producer, he will give a bit of a variation based on some prediction.
So what they did was like nice one parcel, nice professional box with curry and separated and everything. Nice boxes. Yeah, that was really cool. But now after the rush came, they can't do packet like whatever. So this was please. Second son's medical was peak of course. So he's after and myself were invited.
Fortunately, yeah.
By all black panel.
Yeah, this is
One scoop only there. Smooth and
This
cold.
is ginger cookie, mommy. The brown one is ginger cookie.
That's chocolate cookies again.
This is spicy.
It's like bigger
And
than
it's
some and
lots of
buffet. That's buffet. You can't serve. One spoon. And this.
One of your mics is on. One of your mics is on. Hello.
Yeah. So one table, the other table, they are really short. And that will seat
Why
table
is
is
it?
How they? Off kara? Off kara? Can have some fun also, no?
I thought you played something.
Okay. Right. Okay. Right. Right. We are going on. So I was telling you that very basically the typical mass producer will do one type because of changeover. Because he has to change over the machinery and things like that, he will see that advantage. So that is from a production point of view. But from a marketing point of view, the customer will first ask for some other demand which he doesn't have. So as a result of it, there is a lot of turbulence in the selling, the marketing of that. So you must give a little bit of predictability. Sometimes based on past experience or whatever, you might have some insight. So you won't produce all the A's, you might actually produce a few of the other ones also, so that you reduce your buffer. And that's the whole idea here that we are talking about. So you have typically, this buyer has 4 types of shirts, and he will go on producing like this because of the changeover of the machine. But that is from a production point of view. But from a marketing point of view, the customer is disappointed. He can't get the D. So you have to have an earlier D. I mean, so therefore that's what's shown here. Sometimes the D is not waited right up to then. If he demands for a D, he can wait a little bit of time, not too much. So you're leveling. That's what you do. Within certain control limits, you have that predictability. So here's the important thing, and that prevents that happening. Okay, in a situation like that, the leveling might be this form that we are showing in that way. Okay. So this idea about push and pull systems are important to understand. So very often when we talk about push system, we are looking at building to stock, right? You build to stock, whereas pull systems are building to demand. Pull systems are really based on demand. Push systems are triggered when raw materials are ready and things like that. The focus is on the outcome and no consideration about the demand or the customer. So you can see it's not common. So therefore, push systems produce only when you want to build to inventory. That's the important thing to understand. And so the question is, sometimes you have to pull, sometimes you have to push. So they say pull when you can and push only when you have to. That is the principle of a typical pull-push system. Now we come to the end of this thing and we talk about value stream mapping. Value stream mapping is to study a process, how it is now, and to see to what extent there are non-value adding operations and trying to eliminate that. And also try to, as much as possible, meet the customer's demand all the time. And the other one is really how to really create flow, constant flow right throughout. So you can't do it perfectly, but these are all methods to try to approximate these ideas about flow and non-value adding. And so the value stream mapping is mapping values along the stream. So what is value? Sometimes we know very basically what a customer really looks at. Maybe quality, maybe price, maybe time. That may be the value for the customer. Also, we are looking at what a value stream map does, a VSM. It really tries to see the pattern of flow of material. Two things, very important thing. The normal flow chart is only mapping material flow. A normal flow chart will only map flow, but it doesn't map information. It doesn't map information. So value stream map not only maps flow of work, but it also maps information flow. So that's why in Japan, they don't call it the value stream map. They call it a material and information flow map. That's all, right? They don't call it a value. We call it a value stream map. So what it does is it will identify waste. It will also reduce process and cycle time and try to batch stack time. It also implement process improvement. That is, those are three things it does. So you look at the steps. First, you map the current state, what's happening in the normal line. Then you identify what should be the future state, what should it look like. And it doesn't stop there. There is always a next state. Nothing is perfectly final. So that's the thing. So what flows through the value stream? Materials flow, sometimes designs flow, that is information. Sometimes the service flows due to external customer needs. Sometimes it may be internal customer needs within the organization itself for administration, for example, or HR. The value stream map will be internal. So you are developing value over a period of time and you are trying to map it. So these are some of the symbols that you get. You can refer this, of course, these are standard symbols. Typically, a process is shown like this, inventory shown like this. Here I was mentioning about supermarket. Supermarket is a kind of a small buffer that is there between processes to prevent variation. Outside sources might be shown like this, like a supplier or a customer might be shown like that. So no symbols, more symbols. Information flow is shown like this. If it's a person-to-person information flow by verbal transfer or even written transfer, then you call it a manual and it's shown as a solid arrow like that. Whereas if it's information flow through electronic, you show it with a zigzag. So if you have a Kanban system, then you show like this. So many, you can see so many symbols are used. And you have some general symbols itself, which are shown like this. This is generally shown as a, I think last time we showed you about a Kanban, more like a kind of a Kaizen burst might be shown like this, and so on. So a timeline is shown like this. So I will show you the system here. Timing is always based on takt time. So how do you measure that? Depends on the time available. Say you're working 8 hours and there are 100 customers who demand, then 8 hours or 8 into 60 minutes, 480 minutes, and divide by customer demand is 100, we'll say, then the takt time is 4.8 minutes per customer. So that's the takt time. Cycle time is usual from the time the operation begins to the point where the operation ends. Lead time is the time taken. I think we spoke about this timing last time as well. So if you look at a typical chart, you will find that the order received to the order delivered is the lead time, but immediately the operation may not start. So it starts a little later, and therefore it finishes what's shown here. And this is the cycle time, the time the operation is required. It might be stored for some time and then suddenly delivered to the customer. So this is an idea about cycle time and also lead time shown in one, but takt time might be quite different. These are the 7 ways. People talk about an 8th waste as well, but I must tell you that's not a Toyota thing. It came afterwards. Toyota doesn't use that symbol of the 8th waste. But many documents have talked about the waste of a talent, for example, as an 8th waste. It is not a Toyota thing. Toyota doesn't have that, but you can use it. That's the 8th waste. So I'm strictly going on to process. So these are the typical waste: transport, inventory. And one way of looking at it is looking at the acronym TIMWOOD. There are so many other acronyms also which talks about the 7 ways. So let's talk about the value stream map itself, how we might do it. So you will start off with a control center in our organization. And it takes, here you have the customer is shown like that. And there is a discussion between the customer and the control center electronically. That's what's shown here. For example, the customer has information of weekly orders are made, and the control center communicates with the customer about forecast of delivery, right? On the same time, a connection is made with the suppliers before production. That now this is actually remain based on the demand of the customer. That's why the supplier is also given that forecast, and also see both those informations are coming from the production control center, monthly forecast and weekly orders as well. Then the supplier gets activated and he starts. Same time you can see this is a physical communication weekly. That's why it's a solid arrow to the production supervisor that this thing is going to happen. Then the supplier gets activated. Before that, just a few things about some statistics here about the type of operations possibilities are shown there. 1 shift a day, so many hours, lunch break and all that kind of thing. So the available time is only 450 minutes a day. That's of course shown just as a block. So the customer gets activated and weekly he starts applying, and maybe the first task can start as a result of that. The moment that comes, the production supervisor gets geared and and similarly there is a daily virtual. This can be also electronic, but especially if the factories are located in different locations, it can be electronic, but here this is actually a physical thing. And the tasks start operating. And when the tasks start operating, these are what's shown here. This symbol is actually the operator. There is one operator, 1.5 operator. These are statistics, half operator and things like that. So this is actually the push. This is showing a push, right, from one to the other. And then you get the details of these operations, these tasks, right? And operating time, equipment time, and things like that. All those details about the operation are shown there. And here you have inventory, which is caught up in between the stages, shown as so many items caught up in between. And then from there, once the 5th task is over, this item is shipped. And there again, up to the time of shipping, some inventory is held. And then the movement starts delivery to the customer. Then there are a few other things also, like, for example, that the details about so many deliveries and things like that. So this shows various times and things like that. And what's shown here, really speaking, is real operating time is shown at the bottom part here. And the time it is held, this 300 is held, is 10 days. You can see very often what's shown here is that number of days are this inventory is kept between these items, whereas this one might be minutes, really. And so this is one way of looking at a value stream map. Very simple thing. So this is first stage. Then you want to remove this. You want to even it and also try to get the flow and probably turn the push arrow into a pull arrow. So things like that will happen. So this is only the first stage. Okay. Right. So there are problem solving processes. When you discover these issues in between and non-value adding items and things like that, you must now do a root cause analysis to find out why. So you could do it in various ways. The root cause analysis is the problem solving process. And everyone is involved here, including the managers, and as a team you solve it. You don't remember, always when you're trying to do a root cause analysis, a single individual can't do it. These are all team-based problems, particularly if you are doing this is some mistake some of our students itself make even at the final stage, and I ask them why, who did this? Then they say, I did it. You can't do it. Basically, if you're doing root cause analysis, like cause and effect analysis, what we call the Ishikawa diagram, or even the 5-wire diagram, you have to do it to the team. And how you do it is you get the team together in a room, and you can do it actually on visually using computer or projection, and everyone contributes to that, because when you say something, another person will say something else. And the team is also built up on people who have the problem, right? So this is in Japan, of course, you have this term, they always say Genchi, Genbutsu and Genjin, right? Genchi are the really more like the problem, right? Genbutsu means the details about the problem. And Genjin, the word jin, does not mean like lemon gin or something like that. It's actually the jin, the word jin means people, right? The people of the problem. So that's very important to understand how they solve problems. So some of these ways of how to solve the problem is to identify the problem first, identify possible causes, select the most probable cause, find the root cause through analysis, just mention what kind of analysis, and the corrective and prevention action is taken as a result of it, close and follow up. There is no end to this. It goes on and on. So some of the methods, as I said, for example, these are the, you can use the 5Y technique. You can refer that. There is no time to do that, all that, but you just check what the 5Y technique is on the web, right, on YouTube or something. Just a 5 minutes video, they'll show you what it is about, right? The 5Y technique. Then you have the cause and effect analysis. This is normally referred to as the Ishikawa diagram. And then you have other methods also, like what's shown here is brainstorming. Okay, brainstorming is also just taking a group of people and getting ideas, and these are all techniques. So there are specific ways of doing it. That's why you can't just do it like that. So if you want to know the specific technique, just check it out on the web, right? There are so much of items on the web which will give you those kind of explanations. Okay, so now I'm ending up with a very important, this is a case. This is a case. This is the last thing. It's a clip about how this is a medical problem, and how they developed what's called a lean culture. A lean culture is very important. Now, I must tell you, we know a lot of techniques like lean and things like that. There are two aspects to these techniques. One is, of course, the content. How do you do it? How do you basically do it? What's the technique? Now, if you look at, for example, the Ishikawa diagram, anywhere in the world, you can use the same technique. But the conditions under which you do based on what's on the context, which means sometimes the culture. We are not Japanese. We are Sri Lankans. So if you are trying to use a Japanese technique, don't try to be like Japanese, right? You have to try to be like Sri Lankans and use the technique. So there are some subtle changes. Very often, having worked with the Japanese, I know that they also understand that we are not Japanese, in fact, and we are Sri Lankans. So they look at how you have to tweak the method a little bit. That's very important. So if you discover that what the real technique, way of doing that technique in this country, then it works properly. Otherwise, it won't work properly. Really, there are so many things that are important. Some countries like India have got it right. They have translated these typical techniques into the Indian way of doing, right? Without keeping the technique the same, the context, anything has a content and a context. The content is the technique, the context is the conditions under which you do that technique. That's very important. So this is major areas of research. When you want to try and do research, always remember that context is a very important thing to get these things on. So let me play this video. It's a presentation made by a doctor, medical doctor, about healthcare and how you build a lean culture in this setup in order to operate lean systems. Okay, let's listen to that.
Improving anything within the healthcare is a very complex job. It's not easy. You have to go through several processes because healthcare in general is a very complex system. So when we implement lean, we have few objectives in our mind which we want to do it. The objective number one is that any healthcare supply management should help to reduce the cost. This is the most important thing because we are talking here about healthcare. Eventually, patient is paying money and then healthcare is becoming costly day by day. Second, we are talking about improving the quality of healthcare services. Then we are talking about the increasing the productivity using the same resources, same team people, same hospital staff member, how we are going to increase the productivity of organization, reduce the cycle time, and all at the end, the performance of the organization, how the organization is performing. In the lean, you work on continuous feedback system on every level, from the bottom, from the top, from middle, from every level. You collect the feedback, you work on it, and you share. So everyone learns together, then whatever they learn, they share within the team. Whatever they could share from that, they could create the solutions together, and ultimately, if you can see here, they achieve more productivity, more profitability, and together it's a great satisfaction in lean system. What is lean? We discuss about eliminating waste, enhancing value, respect for the other fellow staff member. That is also another most important point today we are going to discuss. Why? Because lean helps you to create a respectful environment for your colleagues, for your staff, and all the people involved in the entire process. In lean, you find the faults in process but not in the people, right? Then outcome that meets the customer demand and continuous flow and improvement. Lean culture starts with the lean leadership. So I know that many of the CEOs and directors and top level employees are present in this session. So this particular session is addressed to them, that if you want to start the lean management, it start from a lean leadership. You can't start the lean strategy within the organization without creating a proper lean leadership. And these are the most important criteria or elements or factors which I think so a lean leader should have. The first, he should be willing to learn what is happening. He should understand, very curious to listen and understand. He should be believing in evidence-based practices. He should see the result. He should see the evidence before taking the decision. Continuous improvement is one of the most important point in the lean management, which we discussed already, that you have to look into the continuous process, you have to look into the communications, commitment, and relationship, and the personality as well for the lean. If you want to implement lean strategy within your organization, what you are going to do? So here are few steps. And regardless whether in a hospital, healthcare, clinic, pharmaceutical organization, or even if you're running your own technology business or any other business, these tools are very helpful to overall improve your profitability, reduce your cost and all. So first and foremost, communicate the purpose, not only the task. Second, be there for the staff. This is also one of the most important thing in the lean. Most of the time, we find the flaws in the staff and we say that you particular are not working good, your activities are not good, you are not able to achieve this result. In lean, we do not actually look at the staff. We definitely improve them, but we also look at the process. We try to find flaw in the process and improve, train them, teach the staff. And I will give you a very good case study. Here is a medical center. They use the lean principle to redesign the work area and their entire process. Why they redesign it? They didn't redesign actually for the patient, but for their own staff member, which resulted saving of 167 miles a year walking of the staff member, just by redesigning their flow, that how nurse, how doctor, or how laboratory technician is walking within the healthcare organization, and they just redesign it and change a certain element. They reduced walking of their staff member by 167 miles, which is the 825 square feet in lab space, process and all. And if you look at it, that whatever the average length of stay decreased from 6.29 days to 5.72 days, which is a significant in healthcare. It might look like a one day, but we are talking roughly around 20% here. Why they did it? Just for their staff, because their staff was getting exhausted and they thought if we be the staff, it will help them to do faster, and if anything helps the staff within the healthcare organization, eventually helping patient as well. So be there for the staff. This is the thing. find the root cause of the mistakes and don't hit your staff directly, and understand that actual cause of problem or mistake could be in a process, in a equipment, or in the length of the work which is there, or maybe in the coordination, maybe in documentation, might not be with the staff. So this is what lean encourages you to look at it. Then here is another case study in Scotland. Cancer treatment using lean system, they reduced the customer waiting time for the first appointment from an average 23 days to 12 days. The huge amount of time you could reduce it by just implementing simple 7 waste elimination tricks. By simple 7 waste elimination trick. And the other thing which you require to communicate with your staff to identify where wastage is happening. If the patient waiting time is high, you all have to do is sit down with your nurses, with doctors, your lab technicians, with your healthcare staff, and find out what is the root cause which is causing such kind of delay, and improve the patient flow time as well. Setting an example to improve, there is one great philosopher who says that the staff will not look at your lips, he will look at your feet, what you are doing. If you keep on saying, and if you're not setting a benchmark, if you're not setting up an example for his staff, as a leader, you might be keep on saying to staff, but they will not implement any solution unless you put yourself into the same situation and show them the results. So your life is your message. The way you live, the way you communicate is your message in the lean setting example. Here is a beautiful picture which I always explain in my lean, is that have a respect for all other team members, regardless whether he is doing a security job or nursing job or any other job. As a leader, you have to have a respect and the work, because what is the strength of lean chain system? If you have a chain, right, the chain is as strong as every link. If you have an entire chain made of steel or titanium, and one of the chain link is a fragile, what is the total strength of the chain? The lowest one, the link, the lowest, poorest link, right? It is, even though if you have 100 links in a chain and 99 made of titanium or heavy duty quality metal, but one link is poor, your total chain strength reduced to that one poor link, no matter what you have in 99. Hence, in healthcare supply chain, it is extremely important for us to understand that every single staff, every single person in your organization is part of that chain. If you have a single fragile chain link, the entire strength is fragile, because mistake could happen from any part. Even if you buy the costliest equipment, even if you buy the costliest medical material, but if you have a one fragile link, a one staff which is not happy within your organization, or is not satisfied with certain things, a mistake could cost a lot to your healthcare organization. And hence, we say that have a respect for your partner, understand, satisfy them, make sure they are comfortable, give them everything they need within your own vision and mission, and have a look at the bottom to top level approach and look at the every link of the chain. You can't just ignore a single link on the chain.
Present is based on a very important thing, that is respect for others. And even the improvement they were talking about, which ended up with shorter time of stay in the hospital for the patients and also less time in the queue, was just based on looking at how much this the staff had to walk for a year. Of course, for a day, they may be walking a few meters more. But if you look for a year, they are walking miles. So by changing the layout, which enable the staff to be a little more easy, probably their service to the patient was better. So as a result of it, the stay of the ultimate impact of everything was profitability for the hospital. So simple things like that, by just looking at respect for people who are working, you can improve the entire thing. So this is the culture that this film was just focusing on a small area of what we are talking about, the lean culture. If you are trying to implement lean, you don't implement it hierarchically. Very often a lot of changes are implemented hierarchically. That is, a policy is made and people have to follow the policy. Lean is not like that. Lean is a team effort, where people together say, we are going to make our change, and that's what's important. That's what really is talking about. Now, we have a little more time, and I'm going to talk about these two assignments, right? Once and for all, maybe. One assignment is about the group assignment, and that is about studying a process. So a process does not mean an organization, right? You go to an organization, try to go to an organization where it's easy for you. You know someone that will help you to break some barriers as well. And an organization which has some repute about something or the other, some known well to do something, that's really good. It need not be a production organization. It can be anything, right? You can go and study a flower shop or something like that, and something like that, and see a process. Now, any organization has many processes. So don't study all the processes. Study one process that is well known to them. So you have an in-depth study of one process, which they say is their key process. So you might have to do a little bit of interviewing at the beginning with the CEO or whoever you know, need not be the CEO, and ask them, what is your key process, right? So he might say, we have so many key processes. So could say, what would you recommend us where we can study this process? So therefore, you need to visually go and watch it for some time, observe it, and get explanation from people who ask questions, and also try to do it. Then you do a flow chart about that process. Flow chart is important. And then try to say go through some of the things that we are talking about. So far, we have done so many sessions. You're talking about the design, you're talking about some of the things we have not done, layout, location. Now today we spoke about lean, things like that. They may not call it a lean process, but you can see how lean it is, right? You can make comments on that. If you are studying a lean process, that's very good. You don't have to study a manufacturing, as I mentioned. It can be a sales thing. It can be a marketing thing. It could be an HR process. It could be a financial process, anything, right? And just document it, explain what the process is, and make some comments about it. That's all that you have to do initially. Any questions on that? No questions, right? Yeah. Okay. Sorry? Word count. Okay. I have no idea. But usually, I can give you the number of pages. Really speaking, about 15 pages. 15 pages is typical MBA kind of MBA level assignment, which includes kind of drawings and things like that, tables if you want to. 15 is too much, is it? Now itself, without looking at the thing, you can't say no. So be quite comfortable in trying to explain it. I would say not less than 10. Not less than 10 pages, right? Usually, now you are asking about words, no? So in a page, normally if you don't have diagrams, there are 250 words. 250 words. Yeah, about 250 words. That is using normal 1.5 spacing and typical A4 sheet. Yeah, sorry, 250 words? 250, no? 300? 350. Okay. So, yeah, it depends on spaces and things like that. When you put diagrams, of course, then it changes, no? So, whatever it is, have the typical front page, front cover page in the usual way. Follow the PIM guidelines. That's very important. Use number type Times New Roman. Better if you use Times New Roman 12 and margins 1 inch on both sides, right? What else you want to know? Right? Don't forget about references. References are not counted as pages, right? What is? Put my name properly, right? They get confused with Trevor Mendes sometimes, and Trevor Mendes is a different person altogether, right? Not me. So therefore, right. Then sometimes get the right. By the way, remember about this similarity index. We have a lot of students have a lot of problems with this, particularly you're at the beginning of your course. So whatever you do, you can archive, but if you're using it again, particularly some of these things like what you're doing now might be usable for the other assignments, but you need to paraphrase. You know what paraphrasing is? Change the writings. Change the writings. There are some smart ways also, like for example, turn them into photographs and put them in, but not letters, right? Right? But a diagram or something like that, you can archive and there is no problem. That doesn't get caught up in the similarity index. Only words are getting caught up in similarity index. So you have to be wise also, right? Very important, because people are going through tremendous problems with our systems. When you find that the similarity index gone high and it is their own work they have actually used. So try to, you know what paraphrasing is, no? You write the same thing in a slightly different way. That's okay because it's your work, and you are entitled to use your work. There is no question about that. Because especially in your final project are very often like operational things, right? You are trying to process improve or something like that. Very often, if you are doing a field study, it is an operational thing. So this subject is very important for you, right? Okay, then the individual assignment is something about your own creativity. So you could design something, because actually we want to whole idea about here is that to kickstart your designing person, you know, the person in you that does designs. Every one of us as human beings are capable of designing. But when we get into organizations, we follow rules and regulations. And there is very little limit to design. So you need to reawaken that designing giant in you, you know. So think about something, maybe a product which you have some familiarity with, and you think it's an urgent thing. How do you get this idea? Sometimes as a dissatisfied customer, you feel that good if something like that was there, you know. So it can be a service, maybe a process. So designing can be for a product, a service, or a process, really. a process, when you talk about processes, it could be even an HR process, a new way of, say, a new way of evaluating a person, right? One of the worst areas in HR is performance appraisal, no? So people hate that area. Then generally, that the boss is playing God about you, right? So therefore, it never works. Performance appraisals in Sri Lanka don't work. That's because it doesn't work how it should work. That, for example, at the end, the person who is being evaluated should be able to argue and say, no, I am not like that. You know, because in another country, most of the litigation against all companies was due to bad performance appraisals. Because people, when they were not happy, they went to a where most of the unions abroad are MBA guys. They have the MBA and the legal background. So they can easily understand what a process is, right? And they will take a guy and litigate. They say, look, you give a wrong performance appraisal, that affects this fellow's life. For life, it affects. Sometimes in Sri Lanka, people are silent and they suffer. Or they get together and strike. Right? So these are problem areas. Sometimes recruitment and selection are problem areas. So I'm just going a little extra on the HR thing, but it could be something else. It will be a smart system where you have to say, identify the attitude of a person or something like that, which you can get some idea. You know, always your idea doesn't originate from you. It may be some research that has been done, and you're taking that idea and putting it into a process. Very often, as I mentioned, innovation is not scientific activity. Innovation is commercial activity. Very often, the scientific activity was the principle. Say, for example, the digital camera. The scientific principle was digitization of images. That scientific thing came by the space exploration. When people decided that people should go into space, they had to find a way of transmitting images. So the digital method of the scientific discovery was pixelization of images. But that idea was taken and put into a camera, which is very important. People want to retain their memories, and also the power of the individual is there. You develop your own photographs on the digital camera. Earlier, of course, you would have to go to buy a film roll and put it into your camera, then go after that and give it to a laboratory to process, wait for about 2 weeks and get it. Now all that is not there, no? There's a major impact. So those are major discoveries. If you can do something like that, very good, right? But there are simple things that you can do, right? A better way of bringing up kids. Right? Okay, I'm joking, right? Well, I mean, some other way. What else? See, one of the guys, actually, last time I must tell you that it ended up with a entrepreneurship skills project also. He made a matrimonial site. Matrimonial site, that is a marriage bureau. So he brought that idea up as a fun thing in the operations class, but it turned out he actually turned that into his final project for entrepreneurship. Because he was from a particular community and they had an issue that people didn't meet each other or something like that. So most of the members of that community were abroad as well. So he wanted to improve the connectivity between that community for marriages. So it was a good thing. Right? So he made a matrimonial site. And I don't know how well it worked. That's a different thing. I think it was working, but you could do that. Be a little bit, have a little fun. Whatever assignment you do, have fun. And if it, I think I told you this, 5 minutes more. I also want to go, no, that's why. Right? Right? Okay. He also wants to go, right? Kind of. Okay. Who doesn't want to go, right? So there is, when I was doing my MBA, I had batchmate, actually my group, we decided to find people who wanted these assignments. After doing the first assignment, we'll, as usual, so we found people and actually we charged the guys for that. So right up to first, I can remember 25,000 was the first job for some assignment, and we earned money by doing that assignment, by giving that assignment to the guy who wanted it. And we got very high marks also, 90s and all those things, because if you do a real thing like that, those guys also will comment, no. So then it has to be improved. They say, no, this is not what I wanted. So you do a realistic thing. The last thing we did, you must remember the year was 1989. And 25,000 was a big thing because the MBA was 15,000. Seriously. And we took loans to get that 15,000 also. So anyway, the last assignment was for strategy. And we did the strategy for United Tractors. And we knew our stuff also at that time. They funded the entire thing, like booking hotels and all those things like that. We conducted the thing and wrote the strategy for that company. 250,000. So I think if you are trying to look for something that really makes you work, that is the kind of thing that you must be a little innovative as well. All right. I don't know whether you still can do things like that. Right. But the fact is, it depends on how. So my team all got merits as well at the end of the whole thing. And in my case, of course, I went with the seniors convocation. I told you about that, right? Okay. Have some fun, otherwise it's useless. You will never, because if the key focus of innovation and creativity and innovation is to enjoy what you're doing. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, you have a big problem. Right? Try to enjoy the MBA. Right, very important thing. Okay, so I'll be doing the next 2 sessions as well. Last session is, of course, we are inviting people to come and talk. So next session will be on layout, location, and the thing after that will be on layout. And the final thing, of course, will be guest presentations on certain things that people, our own MBA guys, what they have done. We always invite our MBA guys for these things. Okay, so see you and have fun in the evening, I hope. See you.